resonated with you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a midlife crisis, but I think it's something of a crisis if you don't have a midlife crisis. I think the adjustment asked of the very sources of your being is so radical that it would be creepy to get through it without some sort of cracks showing. And it's very clear to me now what that was. It's a crisis of mortality, where, you know, if you can define youth, it's the feeling you get when you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, you know, while I'm intellectually convinced that I will get old and die like everyone else, it does seem that you've got away with it, that it's not, in fact, going to happen to you. And as long as you can still feel that in even the sort of most frivolous parts of your brain, as long as there's still a glimmer of that, then that's your youth still there, you know, failing, shrinking. But the minute you accept this, you know, universal truth, then it is going to shake you profoundly. And you know, the novelist, unlike the poet, is a universal figure. I don't think anything's ever happened to me, or I've reacted to anything that's happened to me in a way that hundreds of millions of people, no different. The poet finds his own way, that's not true of the novelist.
The teeth, which we should just briefly mention, because it was an emblematic episode, that in that the media assumed the worst. They assumed that you were undergoing a cosmetic procedure as part of this midlife crisis. In fact, as you explained in experience and have explained elsewhere, it was an emergency dental intervention. But that was a good example because there was a feeling, an assumption to assume the worst.
Well, I mean, assuming the worst is almost the definition of that kind of bourgeois tabloid journalism. There's a sort of cackling scurrility in that echelon of reporting. We're talking about the Mail and the Express and so on. You know, in the old days, I remember when my father got divorced, some drunken debauchee would be writing in his Fleet Street office, Kingsley Amis has betrayed his wife and he's an adulterer and so on. That was just good old hypocrisy. There's no need for hypocrisy anymore because everyone's proud of being a bastard. But we've all had periods of being given a bad time by the press, and it's like releasing a valve of Philistinism and anti-intellectualism and a sort of wrecking spirit, and it's, you know, very English.
For some time now, you've been in a position where anything you say or do, divorce, dentistry, comments about Jordan the supermodel, comments about feminism at a small London literary festival, they go national, they go global, some of them now. There are headlines, there are commentators for days. Does that situation bemuse you, or have you just come to accept it?
It makes you watch your lip a bit more, but I think novelists are not like poets or journalists or academics. We should look to them to say things that are, you know, perhaps a little jarring, but that's, you know, what we're here for. And if that is unwelcome, then the novel is unwelcome.
There was a surprise to me in the more recent books, the extent to which you retreated from fiction. We had experience. We then had Cobra the Dread, which is a work of historical analysis. Second Plane, which is essays and fiction about 9/11. Did that come from a feeling that Yellow Dog had run into at least one notoriously bad review? Was that a feeling that you were in trouble with fiction?
Well, I think I had the big rest from fiction before Yellow Dog. Between The Information and, I think, Yellow Dog. And then I came back into a real explosion don't forget, it wasn't just the reviews. anyone who could hold a pen was queuing up to, you know, like someone getting a kick in during a beating, you know. And it was completely inordinate and very, I felt for a couple of weeks as if I had flu. I mean, it was really lowering. And in my view, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the novel. It's one of my better novels, I believe.
We talked about the way you've changed as a writer. Looking at experience, all adult lives are about additions, the arrival of children, and subtractions, deaths of loved ones. But the sheer range and extent of them is the striking thing about experience, that a daughter you didn't know you'd fathered turns up in your adult life. You discover that a cousin is one of the victims of Fred West. Subsequent to the book, we talked about the death of your sister. Do you feel battered and reshaped by all that? Because it's an unusually dramatic sequence of events.
Well, I mean, my recently discovered daughter, not so recent anymore, I said to my wife, to Isabel, I said, you know, there was a letter disclosing this fact, and she read it and she said, there's no reason why this shouldn't be an absolutely wonderful thing. And she was dead right, and so it's proved. No, that was nothing but a positive event, and she since presented me with a grandson, which is a mixed blessing in some senses, in that it also asks a readjustment of your self-image, you know, as a grandfather. Not very flattering if you grew up in the time I grew up. It's not markedly cool to be a grandfather. And then the enormous and really startling anomaly of losing a first cousin who was a religious, serious, poetic, learned girl to Fred West is almost too, you know, massive an event to be absorbed. But otherwise, you know, we just do have, this is the rhythm of our lives. We are born to be orphans, and we will leave orphans behind us. And I don't think there have been an unusual amount of deaths surrounding me.
You've reached the curious position, as you know, where your omission from Man Booker Prize shortlists is reported sometimes ahead of the actual inclusions. Be as honest as you have been elsewhere. Do you care about the Man Booker and other prizes?
Well, it's become such a monster now that it would be, you know, very simplifying to win it. It would make life easier. I mean, when Kingsley won it, he said, you know, I won't hear a word said against the Booker Prize. I used to have all these objections to it, but they all seem to have evaporated in the last few minutes, he said, as he accepted the prize. And it was, you know, it was a visible fillip for him. It gave him a lot of energy and a lot of encouragement. So there are, you know, non-literary reasons for wanting to win it, but I don't feel excluded from any great pantheon.
Martin Amis, thank you very much.
Thank you.